Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 228. We're talking Week 7 NFL picks. Joined again by Jacob Kamenker from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, I should say, lead off by saying you were 13-1 against the spread last week. I thought I did well. I was 9-5, hit all my top plays, but you were 13-1. How'd you do it?
I'll be honest, I did the same thing I do every week. I just look at the lines, look at all the stuff we talk about, try to figure out which team's the better side. I happen to have a good week. I think it was my third or fourth week in a row with at least 10 wins. I think it was 3 of 10 wins and fourth with at least 9. Obviously, luck did play a portion in this as well, both good and bad. But my strategy is just, pick the team that looks better on paper. And I'm going to explain exactly why I think what I think this week. Of course, if you're trying to buy into the fact that I'm 13-1 now, just know that I can only go downhill from here, right? That's like, unless I somehow go undefeated this week, I have to either regress or go down or just plateau. So we'll see if I can keep it going, but I don't know. That week was pretty insane.
Yeah, your one loss is a game you should have won. It was the Redskins, and they blew a 14-point lead. I actually had the Redskins as well in the circuit contest, as we talked about before we started recording. That was a disappointment. The Redskins were in position to cover, and they almost lost that game outright. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great week. Maybe you'll go 14-0 this week. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, we got to see if I can pull it off. And, it's ironic I should lose the Redskins because I cover them, but I should have known their defense would blow it late because anytime they have like a 2-touchdown lead late, it always ends up being closer than you think. But, I thought it might be different under Bill Callahan, but apparently it's not.
Bill Callahan's not going to be the great savior to save the Redskins, unfortunately. So before we get to the games, how do you feel about this week's slate?
I was looking at some of the early games, and I really liked them. And then I got further down the list in order of how you had them on the site, and I got more and more skeptical of the slate. I think it's kind of a hit or miss. There are some that I really like, and then there are some that I want no part of. I think I liked last week's slate better, not just because I did so well last week, but this week has some games that I think are going to be tricky. And of course, the Raiders are coming off a bye, and I never picked the Raiders right. So that game's going to be tough for me to figure out.
Yeah, they've you said it before, they've been your menace, but maybe you'll get back on track with them. Maybe with the bye week, you kind of figured them out, but we'll see. The first game is Chiefs at Broncos. It's Thursday night game. This line opened up Chiefs -5.5. It's down to 3.5. A lot of sharp action on the Broncos, but the public doesn't see it that way. The public is all over the Chiefs. So are you with the Sharps or the public here?
I'm with the Sharps here, and the main reason is I just don't see why people still like the Chiefs. I mean, we saw last week, I was originally on the Chiefs side before you convinced me on the podcast to switch to the Texans, and you were dead right about that. The Chiefs are just so beat up right now. I mean, their offense does not look good. They can't block. Patrick Mahomes is dealing with some sort of ankle injury. That's going to bother him until the end of the season. We don't really know. Maybe around the bye he'll get healthier, but he's not scrambling as much or throwing as well on the run. And when you don't have good blocking, that hurts. So I don't like the Chiefs for that reason. And they also have a terrible defense. So, I mean, that's something to keep an eye on. And for more numbers on Mahomes, he's completed 57% or less of his passes in 3 straight weeks. So that's very un-Mahomes-like. So he's very clearly not right. Denver is going to want to get revenge on the Chiefs. They lost to them last year on Monday Night Football in a game the Denver really should have won. That's when we saw the amazing left-handed pass from Mahomes. They're going to want to prove that he can't do that in this game. And Denver's really starting to play better this year under Vic Fangio. They had some tough luck losses early in the year, but they still have talent on both sides of the ball. Their running game and defense is really what's been getting them going. I think they'll be able to run against the Chiefs defense, which isn't very good. And I think the Broncos could win this one outright. They're kind of desperate for a win. The Chiefs might be 2 after 2 straight losses, but I think where the Broncos have been playing for their lives every week since they went 0-4, I think they're going to play harder, and just all the injuries on the Chiefs makes it hard for me to pick them, especially as a road favorite.
Yeah, this This Chiefs team is not the same as it once was. The team that started undefeated, and we thought they were going to be a lock to go to the AFC Championship. And I still think they have a good chance, but they have to heal up. Like they have so many injuries. Two people on the offensive line are out. Two starters on the defensive line are out. Sammy Watkins might be back this week, but he may not be 100%. And then you said Patrick Mahomes' ankle. He's clearly not 100%, and because of the injuries to the offensive line. He's not getting much protection, and usually he can kind of maneuver out of it, but he can't do that anymore because of his ankle. So it's just a big problem for the Chiefs right now, and they're playing a very good defense in the Broncos, who have made some changes recently to improve against the run. They got all over Marcus Mariota last week. They sacked the Titans 7 times last week. So this could be a game, and I completely agree. I think the Broncos could cover this game, could win this game outright. I made this line Chiefs -1.5. So even with the line drop, I still think there's good line value on the Broncos. So I'm on Denver for a couple units, might even be 3 units. A reader pointed out to me, made a good point that the Chiefs were on the field. Their defense was on the field so much in the second half against the Texans, and they're playing on short rest, that this could be it could be problematic for them. They could be exhausted. And you brought the Monday night game. It was a 4-point game. And that Chiefs team was better than this one. And I think these two Bronco teams are about the same. So I just think Denver is the right side here.
Yeah, and you mentioned the short rest having a negative impact on the Chiefs' defense. If you look last year, the team played on short rest against a divisional rival in the Chargers. They ended up losing that game by a point. I didn't write down if it was a road game or not, but the fact of the matter is they still lost to what was a good Chargers team last year. The Broncos are solid this year, and the Chiefs are much worse. So I think that short rest really hurts them more than it hurts the Broncos, who didn't have to work as much to take down Mariota and Tannehill and really shut out the Titans. So I'll be joining you for 2 or 3 units. I may wait to see what the exact injuries for the Chiefs are. But the one guy who won't impact my projection is Sammy Watkins, because even if he plays, I think there's a chance that he does the thing where he plays the first drive, realizes he can't play, and then sits out the rest of the game, because he constantly does that, which credit to him for trying to come back when he does, but it doesn't always work out, especially for him.
Yeah, I hear you with that. Something I like to do on DraftKings, especially in the showdown slates, or even in general, is to play the injured players, because a lot of people won't be on them. So that's like one way to get differentiation. So one time that didn't work was the Sunday night game against the Colts. I had a lot of Watkins, and all those lineups died as soon as he left the game in the first on the first drive. So that was unfortunate. We have a question here before we move on. If Kelsey should I trade him for Hunter Henry? I mean, it's a tight end for tight end trade. I don't know. Like, I feel like something else should be added. What do you think?
I think he's asking what he should trade Hunter Henry for. Like, he has both of them.
Yeah.
So I get, it really depends on what type of team you have. If you have a weakness at running, you're really going to get a flex player, I would say, in exchange for Hunter Henry, because tight end position's weak across the league, but no one's really going to give up. Like, maybe you'll get an RB2 from a team that has several RB2s, but generally speaking, I would say target a flex wide receiver 3 type guy. Maybe if someone's souring on a Josh Gordon or a Robert Woods, this would be the time to try grabbing one of those guys for Hunter Henry.
Yeah, like a receiver 2, something like that. Like Henry at this point, if you're redrafting everyone, he's probably like 4th or 5th round pick. So someone like that, I think that makes sense. I mean, Henry just had a big game, so I would sell high for sure. All right, next game, Cardinals at the Giants to kick off Sunday afternoon. Giants open up -1. It's up to 3. I don't know how real that -1 was, but it's been 3 for the most part. A slight lean on the public for the Giants. So who do you like this game?
I can't really fathom why the Giants are favored by 3 points. I was very surprised by this line, so I'm on the Cardinals here. Let's just break it down. The Cardinals just manhandled Atlanta for most of the game before Matt Ryan was able to make a comeback. And now they're going to go face a weaker Giants offense. And I mean, Daniel Jones is not close to Matt Ryan at this point. And I just think that the Cardinals have a better team than the Giants right now and are playing better. And the big important note on the defensive side is they're getting Patrick Peterson back from suspension. And their cornerback play has been bad to start the year because Peterson and Robert Alford have both been out. But with Peterson coming back, he's going to be able to lock down whoever they choose to among the Giants receivers. Now, Sterling Shepard, he's coming back from a concussion. He might be the guy. Golden Tate would be the other option. But so you're looking at taking away some weapons from Daniel Jones. We have Saquon Barkley might be coming back, but I just think the Cardinals are better here. Murray is 4-2 against the spread as a rookie, and the Giants have such a bad defense. I just think the Cardinals could jump out to an early lead, and the Giants may have to play catch up. If Daniel Jones makes a mistake or two, which he might, he's not quite as polished as Murray has been. I think that they'll win. The only issue here is that the Cardinals are playing at 1 o'clock on the East Coast, but if this is +3, I'm all over the Cardinals. I would play them for a few units. The only thing I'm wary of is that early start time.
Well, let me alleviate your concerns about that. The West Coast teams playing on the East Coast in the 1 o'clock games are 7-1 against the spread this year. So kind of remarkable. It's not going to hold up, obviously. I think that's kind of been overstated by the media. I think it's been more 50-50, although there have been some extremes. Like I remember the Mike Holmgren Seahawks used to always struggle in these games. And then you had the Jim Harbaugh 49ers always used to win. So it's like, it really depends on each coach. So I don't know. I mean, we saw the Cardinals cover against the Ravens back in week 2, also an early start time. So they could definitely do it. I think I'm going to be on Arizona with you. I don't think I'm as confident in this game as you are. I made the spread actually Giants -3. So it's kind of like where the line should be. But then I was looking at the computer model and that says Giants -1 is the right number. So maybe it's kind of like thinking what you are. I agree with your assessment on this game, particularly like Patrick Peterson should be able to help the Cardinals out a lot. It really depends on if he's in shape or not, like because we've seen some players come back from their suspensions. Taylor Lewan's like one who stands out, and he hasn't done well. Like he's been struggling. So I don't know how in shape Peterson is. Maybe the added motivation of being traded perhaps might have inspired him to keep in shape, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean he's almost certainly going to be better than what they had, right? So it can't hurt. So I agree. I think Arizona is the right number as long as it's +3. If it drops to 2.5, I might consider taking the Giants. But yeah, I mean I'm not going to bet this game. This is one of my least confident games of the week.
Yeah, and I'm a little biased because I think every time I bet on the Cardinals this year, they've come through. So I just prefer them in general. Kyler is one of my guys. Now, let me ask you this question: which coach do you think is better, Pat Shurmur or Cliff Kingsbury? This may not have an answer yet, but I'm just curious because I was looking at the coaching breakdown. And I was like, I don't know who I would prefer in this.
Well, we know that Shurmur is not a good coach, right? But we don't know if Kingsbury is a good coach, right? Like he's an unknown still. I mean, he's only coached 6 games, so we don't really know. So I guess I'm more likely to side with Kingsbury, but man, that's a tough one. What do you think?
I was also going to lean Kingsbury because that brilliant Pat Shurmur decision to punt when down 2 touchdowns to the Patriots, which led to us being able to cover that 17.5-point spread. That was an Andy Reid-esque decision in time management skills. And I don't mean to insult Reid. I actually love him as a coach. But yeah, this comment, I think, sums it up. Shurmur's okay. That's about it.
Shurmur was okay for betting purposes last Thursday when he had that call. I don't understand that at all. Like, how do you punt? I mean, I forget what was it, a 10-point game at that point? And
I think it was 14 points, but 14, there was like 7.5 minutes left. So if they drove for a touchdown, like they'd still have a chance because the Patriots offense was doing nothing.
Yeah, it was a 14-point game in the fourth quarter, and chances are they were only going to have 1 possession left if they punted, and I just don't get it. It's such a stupid decision. And one thing in the Giants' favor in this game, I'll say, is that they're coming off a mini bye because they played on Thursday, so they had more time to prepare. But they don't have a good coach. Like if they had a much better coach, or even a slightly better coach than Shurmur, I would be more likely to take the Giants. But I don't think Shurmur can do much on extra rest.
Yeah, I think the mini buy will at least keep them fresher. So that'll make me reconsider this a little bit, but I'm still on the Cardinals for sure.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'm on Arizona for now, but we'll see. Next game, I like this a lot more. Texans at the Colts. This line open up. Texans -1. Now the Colts are -1. About 2/3 of the public is on the Texans, so the Texans are a public dog here. So who do you like this game?
Well, the public treated me well last week, so I feel bad going against them, but I am going with the Colts here. I mean, both of these teams are coming off of wins versus the Chiefs. The only difference between them is that the Texans beat the Chiefs this past week. The Colts beat them 2 weeks ago and have been on a bye since then. That bye is going to give Frank Reich a lot of time to prepare for the Colts, or rather for the Texans. And the Texans may be overconfident after beating the Chiefs a little bit because, they've been off to a better than expected start, I would say. And there is an element of revenge for the Texans in this game because the Colts did knock them out in the playoffs last year, but that was also with Andrew Luck. So they may be like, oh, Jacoby Brissett, we can take this guy down. But Brissett's been pretty solid to start this year. And the Texans' offensive line is still an issue. Deshaun Watson has done a great job of avoiding sacks the last 2 weeks. He actually hasn't been sacked, but he still has been sacked 18 times this year. And the Colts last year, in 3 total games, regular season and playoffs, sacked him 15 times, which is just mind-boggling. And they just lost Titus Howard, who was their first-round pick, and he was playing right tackle. And now I think they have to play Roderick Johnson. And I do not trust Roderick Johnson because he couldn't make the Browns, who are very thin at tackle. So I just think that the Colts being well-rested, having extra time to prepare, they should win this game. The -1 number is a very small one. So I like the Colts for a few units here. It's basically a pick 'em, and I think them at home with the extra rest it's a huge advantage for them.
Yeah, I think it's a big advantage. Frank Reich is a great coach, I think, and to give him extra time to prepare to make a great game plan against the Texans, I think is huge. It's one of the reasons why I think the spread's so low. My line for this game is Colts -3.5. So we're getting the 3, which is enormous because, as I always say, like 3 is the most likely outcome of any game. So I think the most likely outcome of this game is the Colts winning by 3. So to get that, I think is enormous. What you said about the Texans is absolutely correct. Like they've gotten a lot of hype recently because they've beaten 2 teams. They put 50 up on the Falcons, and then they went into Kansas City and won. And those wins are nice, but those teams they played haven't been able to rush the passer. The Colts can with Jabal Sheard and Justin Houston, and they have a couple other guys who get to the quarterback well. Like they should be able to put pressure on Watson, especially with Titus Howard out. So I think that's going to create a lot of like dead drives to the Texans where they're just going to go 3 and out, kind of like they did against the Panthers and the Jaguars. Like people forget how inept they looked against those teams in those games. And the Panthers result is kind of recent. So I like the Colts a lot here. They're actually one of my favorite picks, and it's so bizarre that the spread's so low. Outside of quarterback and receiver. Is there a position where the Texans are better than the Colts? I don't see it. Maybe the interior of the defensive line with J.J. Watt.
That was the one I was thinking about. That's mostly J.J. Watt, though, and they obviously run 2 different schemes, so it's kind of hard to compare defensive front. Well, not hard, but it's a little apples to oranges there.
Yeah, so I think the Colts are better at almost every position. So I think that's huge. And yeah, I mean, like I mentioned receiver, and I would take Hopkins over Hilton, but Hilton's still really good. So it's not like that much worse. So yeah, I like the Colts a lot. They're one of my the 2 picks that I have 5 units on. So I'm glad we agree on that one. We're 3 for 3 in agreements.
It's a good sign. Hopefully we keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Question: best survivor pick this week?
Bills. They're playing the Dolphins at home.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the Bills, Dolphins at the Bills. This line open up Bills -17, still 17. There is equal action here. I was surprised that I thought that more people would fade the Dolphins, but it's equal action. So what do you think here?
So if we break down the Redskins-Dolphins game from last week, much to my chagrin, being my only loss, the Redskins had a chance to go up 17 on the first play of the 4th quarter when Dustin Hopkins missed a somewhat long field goal. So if you look at it from that standpoint, they were almost down 17 to the Redskins and ended up somehow cutting it to 1 point because the Redskins stopped trying. So now let's talk about the Bills here a little bit. The Bills have a much, much better defense than the Redskins. The Bills probably have a top 5 unit in all the league. So they are most likely going to be able to shut down the Dolphins' offense. And if Josh Rosen continues to start and play as he's been playing, which through no fault of his own, he has no support. He's not playing well, though. So the Bills will be able to get pressure, force him into turnovers. I don't see a way the Bills don't cover this spread. I think 17 is, I don't want to say too low of a number, but we are again. 17 is a bit too low. The Bills are better than that. They're coming off a bye. The Bills are 4-1 against the spread this year too, and Miami is a very fluky 1-4. They should be 0-5 if the Redskins had lived up to what they should have been doing. But I'm going to go Bills minus 17. I'm going to put maybe a unit or two on it. I don't want to put more just in case Miami tries to burn me again this week, but I can't fathom betting on Miami still.
Yeah, I thought for a second, I thought I wasn't going to bet on the Bills. And then I realized that would be just recency bias. And like for no reason, because the end of that game was nonsense. And it's not like the Dolphins are playing a good team or anything. They were playing a team that was 0-5. And yet the Redskins, as you said, could have been up 17. If you look at the games, the teams the Dolphins have played against, the Ravens, Cowboys, Chargers, Redskins, and then the Patriots. The first 4 teams I mentioned don't have good defenses. The only good defense they played so far is the Patriots. They didn't score a single point in that game. In fact, I don't even know if they crossed midfield like temporarily, and then there was like a pick 6 or something. I don't know if they crossed midfield twice in that game. I could be wrong. Like maybe I'm almost certain they didn't cross the 35-yard line of New England. So I feel like it's going to be the same thing. The Patriots had two defensive touchdowns in that game. I think the Bills will have at least one. And so if the Bills have one defensive touchdown, that means all they need to do is outscore the Dolphins by 11 points. And I think they can do that. Like Josh Allen will be able to run around. They'll run the ball well. They'll have Devin Singletary back. I don't know how the Dolphins are going to stop John Brown. So yeah, I think the Bills are the right side here. My friend Tom, by the way, he texted me this morning. He's like, Bills minus 17. I know it's the Dolphins, but the Bills have only scored more than 17 twice. And my response was, but the Bills haven't played the Dolphins yet. So it'll be 3 times after this.
Yeah, that's a good point that your friend Tom brings up. But the Dolphins are they're that bad. And they're so bad against the run that even if Josh Allen's not having a good day through the air, they're still not going to be able to stop them because Singletary's back, like you said. And Frank Gore's played solid this year against all odds. He's 36 now, and he's still running the ball fairly well. So, I mean, they'll be able to get a ton of yards. Adrian Peterson just ran for over 100 against them. So, I mean, why can't Gore do the same?
That's remarkable. The Peterson rushed for 100 yards against them. He might not even get 10 yards this week, but we'll talk about the game later. The question on the screen, who wins or loses more games, Patriots or Dolphins? I don't think the Dolphins win a single game this year. So unless the Patriots go 16-0, Miami's the answer.
Miami's absolutely the answer. The Patriots have benefited from a weaker schedule. Their offense is still getting on track. That's not to detract from the fact that they're undefeated. They've done a really good job and have a great defense, but I think they're going to suffer a few losses that'll test them before the playoffs, especially if they don't add something to their offense.
Yeah, completely agree. Next game, Vikings at the Lions. So line open up Lions -1, and now the Vikings are favored by 1. There's a ton of action coming in on Minnesota. So are you with the public in this game?
Oh, no, I'm not. This is a massive overreaction. I mean, okay, so Kirk Cousins is hot. He's on fire right now. He threw 4 touchdowns last week. It was against the Eagles, who have like a very beat-up secondary right now. And let me remind you, as someone who covered Kirk Cousins in Washington, he always had this stretch of games where he would be hot and he'd get a big win that everyone would be like, oh, I believe in Kirk Cousins now. And then he'd fall back down to earth eventually. At most, the stretch would last somewhere between 2 and 4 games. So it's sort of similar to how Andy Dalton was at times early in his Bengals career. He'd go on, he'd catch fire at times. Joe Flacco too with the Ravens. But I mean, if you look at what the Lions have done lately, They really should have beat the Packers on Monday Night Football. Some horrible officiating with the hands to the face calls on Trey Flowers that I'm sure NFL tackles are now just going to throw their heads back like this every single time they feel anything near their neckline because of those calls. So the Lions are going to be motivated. They're 4-1 against the spread. Their offense hasn't been playing great, but their defense has been better than expected. And Stafford was able to move the ball on the Packers, at least in the first half. It's their red zone offense that hasn't been good, so their scoring needs to improve. But they're at home. They're motivated to win. And Kirk Cousins, as stupid as this sounds, might be looking ahead to that Thursday night game against the Redskins where he gets to show to his old team what they're missing out on. So as stupid as it is to look ahead to the Redskins, I think the Vikings could kind of fall off here. And one more thing on Cousins. According to my math, he is now 6-26 against teams with a 500 or better record. So I don't trust him to win this game. I think the Lions will win this. And that is my anti-Kirk Cousins rant of the week.
Yeah, people are all over Kirk Cousins now all of a sudden. And because he had that big game, 2 big games against the Eagles and Giants, 2 of the worst secondaries in the NFL. And now he's going to be playing the Lions, who have a good secondary. They have Darius Slay, they have Justin Coleman. They pretty much limited the Packers Monday night, and as you said, they should have won the game if it wasn't for those bad calls. If it wasn't for the bad calls and the fourth quarter meltdown against Arizona, they'd be 5-0 right now. And if they were 5-0 or even 4-1, what would this line be? It wouldn't be Pick'em or the Vikings certainly wouldn't be favored. This would be, I think, Lions by 3. And I even think that would be too low. I think the Lions are a better team than Minnesota. And I made the spread Detroit -4. And that's even factoring in the 1 fewer day to prepare for this game because otherwise this would be -4.5 or 5 for me. I just think I like the Lions roster a lot. They protect Matthew Stafford better than Kirk Cousins is protected by the Minnesota line. The Vikings don't block that well. I think the Lions should be able to get a lot of pressure on Cousins. And Cousins, as I said, he will be throwing into a tough secondary. And the last time Cousins played a tough secondary was at Chicago. People forget. It's crazy how people forget things. The Vikings lost that game 16-6. So I think this could be somewhat of a similar outcome for the Vikings, and yeah, they're going to play in 4 days, so there's a look ahead factor. As you said, Kirk Cousins is going. He's had that Redskins game circled when the schedule came out, so I don't know if he's like fully preparing for this game. So I love the Lions a lot. I mentioned I had 2 5-unit picks this week, and this is the second one.
Yeah, this is my 5-unit pick of the week too, and just there's another motivational edge for Stafford here. The Vikings have beat him in 3 straight games, so he'll want to get back on track, show he can beat them. So that adds to the motivation that's already favoring the Lions. And Stafford has actually only thrown 2 total touchdowns in his last 4 against the Vikings too. So he's going to want to show like, hey, I can beat this defense even if they're regarded as a solid unit. So I love the Lions. I think this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure. And the Lions are trying to avoid a losing record because if they lose this, they're going to 2-3-1, which is obviously not ideal. And the Vikings, they just had a big win, a revenge game against Philadelphia. So I think they might be looking past the Lions a little bit here. So yeah, we're 5 for 5 in agreements. How about that? But the next game is your dreaded Raiders at the Packers. The line opened on Packers -7.5. It's down to 6. There's even a 5.5 at the Westgate, which is just mind-boggling to me. So if you live in Vegas, feel free to jump on that. So who do you like in this game?
So I'm leaning on the Packers. I say very non-confidently, solely because of how poorly I've done picking Raiders games this year. I think I'm 1-4. The only one I got right was the Vikings beating them. But I like the Packers. Since Aaron Rodgers took over as the primary starter at QB, they're 4-32-3 as home favorites against the spread. They're home favorites in this game, obviously, and they're 0-2 as home favorites this year. So that's not exactly a rigging endorsement of the stat I just gave you, but I just think that they're going to want to be able to beat this team. They just somehow managed to beat the Lions despite trailing for most of that game. I know they were helped by bad officiating, and that might give them some false confidence of like, oh, hey, look, we can make this comeback, so they might overlook the Raiders. But I just think the Packers are the better team. I know the Raiders are coming off of a bye. They're getting healthier. But I think the Packers find a way to win this one. I like the -6 number okay enough. I think if Devontae Adams comes back, that's massive for Aaron Rodgers. If he doesn't, I will probably change this pick to the Raiders. I'm not betting this game, though. I just can't get the Raiders right. So I'm going to go with the Packers for now and probably defer to or recommend to the viewers that they defer to your knowledge on this game if you pick the opposite of me, which I expect because you almost always pick the Raiders right and I pick them wrong.
Well, we're on the same side here, so I like the Packers. I think there's good value with them. The advanced spread in this game was Packers -7, and now it's 6 or 5.5. It's probably trending downward. The public is on the Raiders, as I forgot to mention, but the public likes the Raiders. So that's another reason to go with the Packers. But I just think this line's too low. I made this line Packers -8.5. The computer model I use says Packers -8. So it's kind of it should be above the touchdown. So if we end up getting 5.5, that means we get 6 and 7, which are their second and third and most important key numbers in football. I just don't see why these teams should be closer than a touchdown at Lambeau, because the Raiders, I think this is kind of an overreaction. Like they beat Chicago, they beat the Bears in in London. And I think that was misleading because that was Chase Daniel just throwing like horrible passes the entire game. And it looked like, from watching that game, it didn't look like the Bears really were trying that hard. Like they missed tackles, which is very uncharacteristic. It didn't seem like the Bears would beat the Raiders if they tried very hard in that game. And I think that's just throwing people off. And then you look at the Packers game. Yeah, they almost lost the Lions. They should have lost the Lions if it wasn't for the bad officiating. But the Lions are a lot better than the Raiders. So that's just a big difference there. The Raiders lost Vontaze Burfict, so I don't think the run defense is going to be as good. They don't get pressure on the quarterback. Their secondary is a disaster. So I just think Rodgers should be able to throw all over them. Even if Devontae Adams doesn't play, I'm still going to like the Packers. I'm interested in this Alan Lazard character who did well in the second half. Maybe he and Rodgers have a rapport. He should certainly get open against the Raiders cornerbacks. Like that, as I said, like the Raiders struggle against the pass, whereas the Lions are very good against the pass. So I think the Packer receivers should play a lot better in this game than they did Monday night. So I just think everything favors the Packers here. When the advanced spread was out and I didn't know what this line would be, I assumed it was still going to be -7. I'm like, that's kind of tough. I still like the Packers, but at -7, it's not great. But now that it's 6 or even 5.5, that just seems to really favor the Packers. So I like the Packers here.
Yeah, we're getting the line value, like you said. So I feel more confident now that I have some reassurance that I'm not the only one on this side. But yeah, I think the Raiders are a little bit overrated, like you said, because of that Chicago game. I mean, Chase Daniel was so bad, and yet the Bears almost were able to come back and get back in that one. So I think that's being overlooked a little bit too. So we'll see if the Packers can keep their winning ways and see if they end up being the 1 seed in the NFC, which is something I predicted before the season. One of the few things that I am on track to be right about in my postseason predictions.
Yeah. The one concern I have for this game is the Packers might be looking ahead to the Chiefs next week. But considering that the public is all over the Raiders and the Raiders are 3-2, maybe there's a chance that the Packers won't overlook the Raiders. What do you think?
I think it's possible they could overlook them for the Chiefs, but we also talked about how the Chiefs aren't looking quite as good. They're coming off a couple straight losses. So maybe the Packers see that and they're like, all right, we don't have to worry about them right now. Let's focus on the Raiders, who are a team that's kind of up and coming a little bit. And I think that near loss to Detroit may actually help them. That's one of those things that could really go either way. Like, oh, they escaped with a win. Like, hey, look at that. We're so great. Or, oh, man, we escaped with a win. We better try hard and make sure we don't screw up this week.
That's true. There could be some motivation from everyone. Like they're hearing that they should have lost this game. So that could be added motivation. Andrew in the chat says, good. Yes, we're terrible. Excellent work. The story behind this is that Andrew is a Raider fan and he loves it when everyone says the Raiders are terrible. So he's happy that we're picking against the Raiders. But Andrew, most of the public is not picking against the Raiders. So we're one of the few people who think the Packers are going to cover. So I wouldn't be too happy, maybe a little bit. The next game, Jaguars at the Bengals. This line open of Jaguars -3. It's actually moved to 4 recently in the past half hour. I'm not really sure why. I don't know if there's any news on that, but there's a ton of public money on the Jaguars. It's one of the most lopsided games of the week, betting wise. More than 80% of the action on the Jaguars. So, are you with the public here?
I'm not. Once again, I'm against the public. And I wrote in my notes because I saw this line. I just wrote, man, people hate the Bengals. And I understand it. They have not been good this year. They're 0-6. I mean, it's right there. But they're 3-3 against the spread, which is the same as the Jaguars. I think people are getting a little caught up in Minshew mania. And he finally last week looked more like a backup quarterback against the Saints defense. They played very well and limited the Jaguars for most of that game. But both these teams have not seen their defenses play well. The Jaguars played last week against Teddy Bridgewater, but that could continue this week because the Bengals don't have a very good offensive line. But I just think the Bengals keep this one close at home. They were able to cover against the Ravens. I don't like the number 4 for Jacksonville. I just think that this could end up being a field goal game. I think both teams are going to be able to move the ball. It's just a matter of whether or not the Bengals can get through with that cover at the end. So I'm not overly confident in Andy Dalton, but if we're getting 4, I'll take Bengals +4. I'm highly unlikely to bet on this game though, because I don't really trust either quarterback and either offensive line for that matter, because they could be pushed around at any given moment.
Yeah, two pretty bad offensive lines. That Bengals cover, by the way, was unreal. That it was kind of like a roller coaster of emotions because I had the Bengals for a 3-unit pick in real life, and then in the super contest, I had them both in the regular and the gold contest. So it was a lot riding on the line for the Bengals to cover that, and it was just crazy. Like Andy Dalton was sacked twice, and then there'd be a penalty, and they move like closer to midfield, and then Dalton would take a couple sacks. And they move back, and then they'd hit another penalty, and like it kept moving like back and forth, and then they were down at the 5, and then they were reviewing a play, and like, it was just crazy. And then Dalton ran in the touchdown. It was amazing. So I was pretty happy about that. This line's too high. I made this line Jacksonville -2. The computer model says Jacksonville -2 is also correct. DVOA says Jacksonville -3 is the right number. So to get +4, I think it's pretty big. The Bengals haven't obviously they're terrible. They can't do anything well, really. Maybe running the ball against bad run defenses is something they can do well. The Jaguars don't have that good of a run defense, so maybe Joe Mixon can get going. But the Bengals are going to allow some big gains to DJ Chark. So I expect Jacksonville to score. But then again, like I said, I think Mixon can run the ball as well. So I think this will be close. People kind of forget that the Bengals almost beat Seattle in week 1, which is kind of bizarre, but they almost beat the Bills as well a couple weeks later. So the Bengals can be competitive against lesser teams. And no, it's kind of weird saying Seattle's a lesser team, but I think they're overrated at 5-1. And the Bills also 5-1. It's kind of crazy that they almost beat these 5-1 teams, or Bills are 4-1. Kind of crazy that they almost beat these teams, but yeah, they should be able to hang with the Jaguars. The Jaguars aren't that good, so I like the Bengals here. The unit count depends on injuries, and I say this every week. Cordy Glenn returns. It's a big boost to the Bengals because he's very good. Right now, they have John Jerry playing left tackle, which doesn't sound like a good idea to me. But Glenn would be a big upgrade. There's also a chance AJ Green comes back, and that would be a nice boost as well. So if either of those guys comes back, this will be like a 3 or 4 unit play. If not, I'm still going to be on the Bengals for a couple units because this line's too high.
Yeah, we talk about Cordy Glenn every week for sure. And I'll be honest, I had no idea John Jerry was playing left tackle. That is terrible. That is absolutely awful. I mean, how bad does your offensive line have to be that you're playing a bad guard at left tackle? So, despite that, I'm still on the Bengals, and I'm sure they'll prove us wrong at some point and earn their victory for Zach Taylor.
Yeah, it was. I couldn't believe it either. It was crazy. Question from Kalen in the chat: Deshaun Watson in the MVP race. Should I get a Watson or Andre Johnson jersey? I actually got a Will Fuller jersey a week ago because he helped me win a DraftKings contest. But what do you think about this question? These two questions.
I think for the jersey one, you have to go with Johnson just because he was on the team for a long time and really good for a long time. Those types of jerseys will never go out of style. That's one that'll always work. That's why I bought a Kemba. Well, this is actually a bad example, but I bought a Kemba Walker jersey or Kemba Walker shirt, number 8 for the Celtics. But it's also an Antoine Walker shirt because Antoine used to be number 8. Fun facts about my Celtics fandom, but Deshaun Watson is definitely up there in the MVP race. I don't know if he's at the top right now. I think Russell Wilson is my MVP at this moment just because that Seahawks team, as you said, and we'll probably talk about later, is very overrated. But Wilson has been able to carry that offense and really will them to 5 wins. So he'd be my pick right now. Watson would probably be second or third, depending on where you want to slot in McCaffrey. I put Mahomes at 4 because, one, the NFL doesn't like picking repeat MVP guys back-to-back years. And 2, I don't think the Chiefs have lived up to expectations so far. So it's kind of not that you don't pick an MVP from a team that isn't or that makes the playoffs, which Chiefs probably will, but it could end up being that they make it as like the 4 seed, and that would be kind of not living up to expectation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'd order the MVP race like that as well. Okay. So next game, Rams at the Falcons. So I open up Rams minus 3.5. It's down to 3. 2/3 of the action on the Rams. So not a lot. Like I imagine if this was a week ago, it would be like 80% on the Rams. But it's still a considerable amount. So who do you like in this game?
I don't like either side. As you know, I've been very upset with the Falcons' performance this year. But these are 2 very overrated teams that have the potential to be very good on offense, but they have horrible blocking issues. Matt Ryan can deal with the issues a little better than Jared Goff. Goff needs better protection, so that would be one check mark for the Falcons in this one. But I have a lot of trouble picking the Falcons because their defense is so bad. Even with Matt Ryan's excellent home record, I just think that the Rams are due to bounce back on offense, and they should do it against a weak defense. The Falcons don't have much of a pass rush, so that could benefit Jared Goff. And I did a little research. The Rams, since 2017, are 5-1 following games which Jared Goff throws for 0 touchdowns. So they tend to bounce back, at least from a result standpoint. So they do earn the win. I don't know what they are against the spread in those games, but for that reason, I think that I would go with the Rams minus 3 in this one. I'm not overly confident in that because, again, Matt Ryan at home is a factor, and the fact that he could just throw a garbage cover touchdown at any point, or, say the Rams go up a touchdown, then the Falcons score late and try to go for 2 because Matt Bryant missed an extra point for them to tie and go into overtime against the Cardinals. So there's a lot of risk in this game. I'll probably go the Rams at most for a unit, but I may not end up betting this game.
You actually have a few more units on this game on the Rams than you do. I like the Rams quite a bit. Think about it this way: if Greg Zuerlein didn't miss that field goal at the end of the Seattle game, and the Rams ended up winning in Seattle, and they'd be 4-2 right now. Like, granted, I know they just got blown out at San Francisco, but still, if they were 4-2 and they're playing at Atlanta, a 1-5 team, like, what would this line be? It would definitely be higher than 3, right?
Yeah, I'd say maybe 6. I think 6 would maybe be the highest at this point.
Yeah, something like that. So I think there's good line value with the Rams. The advanced spread on this game was Rams minus 4. The computer model agrees with what you just said. Is the computer model thinks Rams minus 6 is the correct number. I think the spread is bumped down based on I think like the public overreaction to what they saw in the San Francisco game and also Tampa a few weeks ago. I think the Rams are going to bounce back against Atlanta. And what you said is true. Like, both teams can't pass protect. They both have dreadful offensive lines. I think the difference is that Atlanta can't get to the quarterback. So I don't know if they can fully take advantage of the Rams offensive line, whereas the Rams still have Aaron Donald. They still have Michael Brockers. They have other pass rushers who can get to Matt Ryan and kind of rattle him. So I think that's going to be a big difference. And this Atlanta team just sucks. Like I know both these teams have underachieved this year. But the Rams are just a lot better than Atlanta. Like Atlanta, if Nelson Aguilar doesn't drop that pass in week 2, Atlanta's 0-6 right now. They just have so many injuries. Keanu Neal's absence is huge. And I just think that with Atlanta not being able to cover anyone, we just saw Marcus Mariota throw all over them a few weeks ago. And we've seen what happened to Mariota since. I just feel like I don't see how the Falcons would be able to cover the Rams receivers at all. So I think the Rams is kind of like a get right game for them. So I like the Rams for 3 units.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see it. Again, I'm always reluctant to put too much against Atlanta because they were my Super Bowl pick. And, I'm kind of starting to think that maybe I did so well last week because my Super Bowl pick for Atlanta was so bad that it bought me some good karma. But, we'll find out what happens. But the Rams should definitely be favored in this game. They're the superior team. And I think Dan Quinn's going to be the next coach to get fired. I was right on Jay Gruden so far. I don't think Quinn gets fired in season, except maybe before the last game. They'll do it just to say, like, hey, we're going to fire you. So if you want to look for coordinator jobs or something else, you have the permission to do that. Arthur Blank's a pretty classy owner, and Quinn did get them to a Super Bowl. But I think it's probably going to be time for a coaching change after the season.
Yeah, I completely agree. Luke in the chat says, but if Matt Bryant didn't miss, the Falcons would be 2-4. I'm not sure about that because they would have tied the game and the Cardinals would have had one more possession. So and the way Arizona was moving the ball, they scored a touchdown on the previous possession too. So I think Arizona would have driven down and kicked the field goal to win.
I think they would have tied. Just imagine if Arizona had 2 ties. That would be hilarious.
That would be something else. There must have been teams in like the 30s or 40s that had 2 ties. I've never seen a team with 2 ties, but that'd be interesting. It would make for some weird tiebreakers because, imagine if a team was like, not the Cardinals, but like imagine if a team was like 7-7-2 versus a team that's 8-8. Like how would that even work? I don't know.
I think each tie counts as a half a loss, right? And a half a win. So they would technically be.
It would be the same. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know how they would go about. Does having more wins make you better? I would assume so, but we'll have to consult the NFL on that one because that is actually an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out when it comes to that. Last of the early afternoon games, 49ers at the Redskins. This line open at -10, still -10 as you would expect. Tons of money coming on the Niners. So you've been up against the public? Are you with the public this time?
I am. The public's right here. There's no reason to bet the Redskins. They almost lost to the Dolphins. I mean, that's all you really need to say. Their coaching is still terrible, even without Jay Gruden. Greg Minuski really does not belong as a defensive coordinator in this league and has proved it time and again over the past couple of years. He's only there because the team, for whatever reason, didn't want to fire him along with Jay Gruden. And last week, he proved that he can get the team to play well in spurts, but when it really matters, they'll quit on him. And that's been an issue over the course of the years. So the 49ers are just superior on both sides of the ball. The Redskins might be able to get some pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo if they can get their edge rushers going against the backup tackles on San Francisco. But Kyle Shanahan's such a good coach. He may even have a revenge element here because his father's tenure in Washington came to an unceremonious end as well. So you never know. But I think the 49ers are just the superior team anyway. So I'm on them. I will not be picking Washington for the rest of the year at all. I can pretty much guarantee that.
Nice. Yeah, the revenge narrative I hadn't thought of. That's pretty cool. I didn't think of that. Here's something else. Another motivational factor in favor of San Francisco. I think this could be a game where they kind of like we saw last week with the 2 LA games where we could have a lot of the visiting fans in the stands. And the 49ers, when their team's good, their fans travel very well. With how good the 49ers were in the 80s and 90s, like they're going to have some fans who live on the East Coast. So I think there's a chance that the 3/4 of the stands could be full of 49er fans, especially considering how bad the Redskins are. So, we've seen the Rams and the Chargers struggle with this. When the opposing fans are causing a lot of problems and they can't hear when they have the ball and they have to go to a silent snap count. I think it could be the same thing with the Redskins. And the Redskins just won their first game. They really don't have much to play for. They know they're not going to go to the playoffs. So I think usually when these horrible teams win a game, they tend to fall flat on their face the following week. So I think that's going to happen to the Niners as well. The Niners, they could be looking ahead a little bit. They're coming off a big win against the Rams. They play the Panthers next week, who are 4-2. So it's kind of like a big game. But the Niners are a young team. They have a lot of energy. Usually these young teams that are really, really enthusiastic don't look ahead. So I think the 49ers should be able to cover the spread. This line is high, though, 10, and there's so much public money that I don't know if I'm going to get to a bet on the Niners, but for office pool purposes, I'm definitely going to be on the Niners.
Yeah, I may not bet on this one because the line is high as well. One more element that we could look into. We talked about the Kirk Cousins looking ahead game. Case Keenum might be doing the same thing. They play on Thursday night against the Vikings, who made it to the NFC Championship game with him as quarterback. And, he probably would be feeling a lot better if he was still the quarterback there. Oh, of course, my dad is saying hail to the Redskins. He's not a Redskins fan. He's just doing that. But Keenum may want to shove it in Minnesota's face and try to upset them. So that could even give them, the Redskins, less incentive to play well this week if their quarterback's not going to be focused. And it doesn't seem like Bill Callahan wants to put in Dwayne Haskins yet, or anyone in that front office. So he's not really in danger of losing his job. So I don't see a reason that this offense or defense will play well.
Yeah, I agree. In the chat, Andrew says Niners are garbage in fantasy, though. Not George Kittle. He's awesome. And if you have the Niners defense this year, you're doing very well. The Niners is so good defensively. It's kind of they made every single team they played this year look bad. That's pretty rare.
Yeah, I like Robert Saleh to be a head coach candidate, actually. I think he's maybe one of the next up-and-coming young defensive stars. So we'll see if he gets any interviews this time around.
Yeah, you definitely should. So before we get to the late games, I should mention that we're sponsored by DraftKings.com. You can go to DraftKings.com and enter in promo code WalterFootball. That's one word, WalterFootball, for a bonus with their first deposit. So you get to play contests for free, and you get to help this podcast. So why not? Why not do it? So Luke says strength of victory would be different. Ties don't count. It's half a victory. One team would have 7 victories. The other would have 8. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But I would still love to see a 7-7-2 team.
Yeah, no, I would too. And thank you for checking that out, Luke. That's kind of what I thought would be the case, but that makes a lot of sense. Also, we have breaking news that I just saw on Twitter. Jalen Ramsey has been traded to the Los Angeles Rams.
Wow, for what? I don't.
Let's find out. I have my phone right here. 2 first-rounders and a 4th-rounder.
Wow, so that's why they traded Marcus
Peters. That makes a heck of a lot more sense than relying on Nickel, Roby-Coleman, and Troy Hill as your starters at corner.
Wow, I'm gonna have to post some grades after this this podcast. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, what do you think about the trade, real quick?
Oh man, off the top of my head, I would say, the Jaguars getting 2 first-round picks, one in 2020, one in 2021, and a 4th-round pick in 2021. I think that probably outweighs how good Jalen Ramsey is. I don't know. Ramsey should provide the Rams with better coverage, but they play in such a good division right now that are we even sure they're going to make the playoffs? I'm not convinced they're going to make the playoffs. Let me put it like that. This should help them for sure, but I think they gave up a little bit too much just because the 49ers, if they keep playing like they're playing, the Seahawks, if they both get in the playoffs and the Rams can't, then this is going to look really bad.
Yeah, this doesn't even solve their problems, though. Their biggest problem is the offensive line. And Jalen Ramsey is definitely an upgrade over Peters, but, Peters outside of, he's had a couple of rough games, but for the most part, I thought he's played well this year. And, Ramsey's definitely an upgrade, but, they're not going to block better. So, and I don't think they're better than the Niners, and Seattle's already beaten them. Seattle's 2 games ahead of them. So they have to catch they have to hope that they're the third wild card team from that division, even though every team in the NFC North has a non-losing record. Like this is pretty tough. I don't know. I don't think I would have done this.
Yeah, I don't think I would have either. Props to Jacksonville, though. They got a guy out of the locker room that didn't want to be there and got a king's ransom for them. Now, my question is, how would you compare this to the Laramie Tunsil trade? Like, just from a compensation standpoint, do you think that the Rams overpaid more or the Texans overpaid more?
I think the Texans overpaid more. Like Ramsey is, you can argue, is the best cornerback in the NFL. Like I probably put Gilmore there, but Ramsey's definitely top five. Whereas Laramie Tunsil's not a top five tackle, right?
Right. Okay. I firmly agree with you. I just wanted to throw that out there because those are the two of the bigger trades we've seen in the NFL over the course of the years.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's crazy. All right, well, I'm looking forward to grading this. All right, let's get to the three late afternoon games. The first one, Chargers at the Titans. This line open up Titans -2.5, down to 2. A lot of public money coming in on the Chargers, so the Chargers are a big time public underdog. So who do you like in this game? Who do you like in this game?
I like the Titans a lot. I mean, the Chargers' biggest weakness is at linebacker. And I feel that the Titans can expose that with Derrick Henry. If they just use the running game to their advantage, they should be able to win this game. They'll control the clock. They'll play good defense above all else. The Titans have a very strong defensive unit. And, you know, we've seen how bad the Chargers' offensive line is, and it might get even worse because Trent Scott, I think, was hurt at the end of that game against the Steelers. I don't know how he's doing. I didn't check up on him because Trent Scott isn't a very good left tackle anyway. But, you know, if you get into the backup phase there at tackle where they're already weak, that's not a good sign. So I think the Titans, if they could find a way to just get solid play on their quarterback, no big mistakes, no constant sacks, no turnovers, whether it's Mariota or Tannehill, and they just keep feeding Derrick Henry, I think they find a way to win this game. I mean, I'm not crazy about this one because both teams have kind of been blah teams all year. So I'll be on the Titans here. I might put a unit or two down depending on what the injuries shake out to be, but I think they match up well against the Chargers, and the inverse, the Chargers do not match up well against them.
Yeah, I think this is a good matchup for the Titans as well. I mean, the Chargers' offensive line has just been a disaster. Like they don't have Mike Pouncey anymore. The center, their left tackle has been like horrible. Like I mean, Trent Scott's just terrible, and if he's not available, they have to go to the next guy. Like this just sounds like a nightmare against the Titans. And the Titans might be getting Cameron Wait back, and the Titans have had some issues blocking as well. But they could be getting a guard of theirs back, Pamphile. So they've had Nate Davis starting a right guard, and Davis, I think, has been the worst offensive lineman in the NFL outside of what Miami has. And just having anyone who's better than Davis should help a lot. This Chargers team just stinks. Like I don't think people realize how bad the Chargers are. Like I think they're kind of like Atlanta, where people don't realize how bad Atlanta's been. It's the same thing with the Chargers. The Chargers, their only cover this year has been against the Dolphins. Their only win otherwise was against the Colts in week 1 when Adam Vinatieri missed all those kicks, and that game went to overtime. So if Vinatieri could have made a field goal in that game, the Chargers would be 1-5 right now, with their only win being against Miami, which was kind of like a close game too, like if you remember. So I think the Titans are definitely the right side. I think this line's too low. I made this line Titans -4.5. I just think the Titans are just a lot better than the Chargers. The Titans looked terrible last week, but that was a tough matchup. And I think they should be able to get back on track here, even if it's Mariota again. We saw Mariota throw all over Atlanta a few weeks ago. And this Charger team's missing their top 2 safeties. Their linebackers are so slow. I just think this is a great matchup. So I love the Titans this week. It's going to be like a 4-unit play or so, really depending on the injuries.
Yeah, and you know, you bring up a good point. Mariota had a bad game last week, but again, recency bias. He has been good at times this year. I mean, no one's going to argue he's a great quarterback, but one thing he's done particularly well outside of last week is avoid turnovers. And I think, you know, all he needs to do against the Chargers is be efficient because Derrick Henry can carry most of the load against them. So I definitely like the Titans. I think this is a pretty easy pick.
Nice. think we've agreed on every game so far.
I think we have. So if there was ever a week for us to just go undefeated, this would be the one.
Let's hope so. So we have four more left. Let's see how it finishes. The Ravens are at the Seahawks. Seahawks are they open -3.5, still 3.5. The line hasn't moved since the Marcus Peters trade announcement, but maybe it will. We'll see. So who do you like in this game?
I like Seattle, and I'm going to use a piece of bad logic here just for fun because I love doing this. So the Seahawks just beat Cleveland by what, 4 points or something along those lines? And Cleveland, Cleveland beat Baltimore by 15. So hypothetically, the Seahawks should win by 19, right? Right? That's how that works. But yeah, obviously that's not the case. But this line just seems a bit low to me. The Seahawks are really good at home. Russell Wilson, during his career at home, this is outright not against the spread, is 46-13. So they're likely to win this one. Baltimore is super overrated. They've only covered once this year. It was against Miami, so it doesn't count. So they've never covered against a team that isn't Miami. And the Ravens are coming off of a win against the Bengals. They might be looking ahead to the game against the Patriots that's coming up. I know the Seahawks are no slouch of an opponent, but when you think about it, which game matters more, the game against an NFC opponent or the one against the AFC opponent? Probably the one against the Patriots. So I think that everything lines up well for the Seahawks here, and I think the Marcus Peters acquisition is going to make this line possibly come down a bit if it's reported that he'll play. So if we get the Seahawks -3, I'll be all over this. As it is, I like this for a few units. Seattle -3.5. I think they could win by a touchdown. And I probably would have made this spread something along the lines of Seattle -5, -6, just because I think Baltimore is very overrated.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you in saying when you said Baltimore is very overrated, but I think Seattle is very overrated too. I think these are two of the most overrated teams in the NFL. So I'm kind of upset that they're playing against each other this week. So I just like picking against them. So this game's pretty unappealing. I don't think I'm going to bet on this game unless something weird happens at the spread or we get some crazy injury news. I think the injury report really will kind of determine where I'm going to go with this game. We don't know if Dwayne Brown's going to play yet. The Seahawks obviously didn't miss him last week against Myles Garrett, and the Ravens don't rush the passer as well. But I still think Dwayne Brown's injury is still important, especially if the Seahawks are missing another starting lineman. We don't know if Marquise Brown's going to play. There are other members of Baltimore secondary who they're questionable as well, although Marcus Peters kind of alleviates those concerns a little bit. So I think the most likely result of this game is Baltimore winning by 3 or Seattle winning by 3. So I'm going to be on the Ravens if they're +3.5. This line were 3, I would maybe consider Seattle. So that's how close this is. This is one of this is like my least favorite game of the week, I think. So I'm on Baltimore right now. So this is our first disagreement, but I could end up being on Seattle depending on what the injury report looks like.
Yeah, that's fair. Both these teams are overrated. I just think the Ravens are more overrated than the Seahawks. And so I go with the home field advantage because the Seahawks have a good one. But this game really could go either way. Both of these teams are due to lose. But if the Steelers are going to win the AFC North, like I think they are, I need the Seahawks to win too. So that's another reason I'm favoring them here. But we'll see what happens. This one is one that I like a bit more than you do, but I can see why you wouldn't like it because it's similar to any game that Atlanta plays in for me. It's very, very hard to make a pick if Atlanta's playing a mediocre team.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last of the late afternoon games, the Saints are at the Bears. This line opened up Bears -4. It's down to 3, although -125. So who do you like here?
I like the Saints. Teddy Bridgewater is still 18-4 in his last 22 starts against the spread, that is. He's been improving on that every week. I see no reason that he shouldn't improve on it again. I mean, the Bears match up well against the Saints on defense, but their offense doesn't match up well against the Saints. So I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, similar to what we've seen the Saints do in recent weeks. Their defense has stepped up. Their offense has been efficient enough to keep games close and win. I think the Bears could win this one, but I think New Orleans also could win this one outright, and it would be a massive win for them. I know it's on the road, it's Soldier Field, it's not a dome, but I think +3 with the Saints is just a good number. I think like you say, a likely result of this game might end up being Chicago winning by 3, but I just can't pick against Teddy Bridgewater and the Saints, so I'm going with the Saints.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Based on how these teams have played, I think you would have to take the Saints, but I think a lot could change for the Bears because they had just had a bye. So having extra time to prepare for this game, I think, is huge. Coming off that London game, in which the Bears were embarrassed, I think they're going to be more motivated. And the Bears beat the Vikings by 10 points at home. And if they beat the Vikings by 10 points at home, I think they can cover the spread against the Saints. So what I want to see from the Bears from their bye week is an improved offensive line. They had a great offensive line last year, but some of their guys haven't played well this year. Kyle Long's been injured. So, I mean, he's out, so he's not going to return. But their tackles, Charles Leno and Bobby Massey, they've struggled this year. So I don't know if they're injured or banged up or what. But if they use the bye week to heal up and maybe improve, I think that could be huge against the Saints because the Saints have Cameron Jordan and Marcus Davenport. So it'll be very important for the Bears to improve on the offensive line. And the defensive line is a concern too because they lost Akeem Hicks. And so I think the Saints could run. We just saw Josh Jacobs run well against the Bears. So I think Alvin Kamara could run well against the Saints if the Bears don't improve that. So it's a tough one to handicap, I think, because we don't know how the Bears are going to look out of their bye. But the one thing that I will point out is that the Saints are a big-time public dog. The Saints, they're getting about the 3/4 of the action here. And so I love going against public dogs. So I'm going to side with the Bears. So our second disagreement, but I'm not crazy about this game. I don't know if I'm going to bet this game. I might maybe for a unit if the injury report looks good, but I don't like this game too much.
Yeah, I'm not loving this game either because I've been riding the Saints gravy train, and it seems like that's going to have to end at some point. And this would be the likely matchup it would happen, but I'm just favoring them because they're the dogs. I know they're on the road, and I know they're a public dog, so that scares me off enough that I probably won't bet this one. I'll revisit that later in the week, but if I had to pick one now, I'd go with the Saints just because they've proven right by me, so I can't desert them.
All right. Speaking of public dogs, Eagles at the Cowboys. It's line open up Cowboys -3. It's still 3. Almost 3/4 of the action also on the Eagles. So are you siding with the Eagles here?
Yeah, I'm on the public dog again, which makes me nervous. But I just think this feels like an overreaction to the Eagles getting crushed by Minnesota. I know they didn't look good, but how good is Dallas? Dallas has lost 3 in a row. They haven't looked good. Amari Cooper's hurt. We don't know if he's going to play. Randall Cobb's been banged up too. So you're looking at Michael Gallup as being their one quality receiver. And then not Jason Tatum. Sorry, I'm on Celtics. Jason Witten. Being the tight end there to get a lot of targets, which they could move the ball with Ezekiel Elliott in the passing game, but the Eagles' run defense is still solid. And I think there are some things that scare me about this game. I mean, Doug Peterson guaranteed they're going to beat Dallas, which seems like a terrible idea, especially for a team like the Eagles that hasn't quite lived up to expectations this year. But I think the Eagles and Dallas, in my mind, are roughly equal. So I get why Dallas would be slightly favored at home, but 3 points, I don't see that as much. So I'll go with the Eagles here. Again, this isn't one that I'm wild about. I may put a unit on this one. The line in my head for this was Cowboys -1, so I think I'm getting a little line value. But I don't know if your thoughts are different here.
This is kind of like the opposite of the Ravens Seahawks game, but also very similar to Saints Bears. So opposite being, the Ravens Seahawks, I think, are 2 overrated teams. I think the Cowboys and Eagles are 2 very underrated teams. You mentioned that the public overreaction to the Eagles losing to the Vikings. I got more criticism for putting the Eagles in the top 5 of my power rankings than any other team this week. I think people forget, like, the Eagles had so many injuries at receiver that 2 of their games were decided by backup receivers dropping passes. If their starting receivers were there and they caught the passes, and maybe they would have been in that position anyway, the Eagles would be 5-1 right now, and no one would be complaining about them being in the top 5. Whereas Dallas, like, it seems like everyone's trashing Dallas right now. But Dallas has had some injuries. You mentioned Amari Cooper, and he was out. He got injured early last week. But they didn't have their two tackles in that game. Tyron Smith, Lyle Collins, both are fantastic players. And, I wasn't a surprise that they kept them both out. I thought they were saving them for this game. And it just seemed like Dallas was willing to punt that game against the Jets. And I don't think they were prepared for Sam Darnold either. They knew he was going to come back, but I don't think they were ready for how good the Jets are going to be with Darnold. So I'm not going to read too much into that loss. So if you look at their other two losses, they were to the Saints, who are 5-1, and to the Packers, who are 5-1. So nothing to be ashamed about, like being 3-3 right now. So I think there's just also a major overreaction to Dallas. And I think we see it with this public money coming on the Eagles. People are just way down on Dallas right now. I'm not. I think if Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins come back, Dallas is going to have a nice offensive game, especially considering how banged up the Eagles secondary is. The Eagles are missing their top three cornerbacks, which we saw was just terrible against the Vikings. And obviously Dallas doesn't have the receivers that Minnesota does. But I still think Michael Gallup could have a big game. And we'll see if Amari Cooper plays. Doesn't sound like he will. But I think Gallup could still have a big game. So I like Dallas a little bit here. Actually quite a bit as it currently stands. But a lot could change on the injury report. So we're going to see what that looks like. As of right now, I have Dallas for 3 units. And that kind of assumes that the two tackles will be back and none of the Eagles cornerbacks will return. But we'll see. That could change. The Eagles cornerbacks could return, and if they do, that'll change my pick. So yeah, I guess stay tuned. Late in the week, I'm gonna have updates on the site. So yeah, that's where I stand right now.
It's Michael Gallup, your pick for DraftKings Showdown captain. You think that'll be it if the Eagles are missing corners and Cooper's out?
Yeah, I think so. What I like to do for showdowns is I mentioned one strategy, playing injured players on the injury report. Another thing is I like to fade the player I believe to be the most owned non-quarterback. So I don't know who that's going to be. I guess it would probably be like Alshon Jeffrey or Zach Ertz. And I guess it would be Elliott. It would be Ezekiel Elliott. And it's still tough. It's tough to fade him. But I guess I would do that. So I would say Michael Gallup would be my captain. Pair Michael Gallup with Dak Prescott, and then run it back with Carson Wentz, and then either Jeffrey or Ertz, and then throw in a kicker. I think that's where I would go with the showdown slate. And I mentioned that I won the Falcons-Texans showdown slate, and I applied that strategy there. I didn't play Hopkins or Julio Jones in that lineup, and that lineup won. And you're going to lose. You're obviously going to lose if the great players go off. The highest owned players are going to go off. Like if Julio or Hopkins went off in that game, I wouldn't have won. And that's fine. But chances are they're going to not be as productive every single game. And if they aren't, you're going to have big leverage on the field. So that's what I like to do with that.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good strategy. That's usually what I try to do in showdown slates, though my success is very poor. I tend to just miss out on the right guy, but hopefully Michael Gallup will be that this week.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that makes sense for him to be the captain. He's probably going to be my highest owned captain. So before we get to the Monday night game, I wanted to plug my book, if I may. So a safety and a field goal, which is available on Amazon. Oh, nice! You have it too. Awesome.
I do. I actually had it handy too. So
that's awesome. Thank you for buying that.
No, of course.
Yeah, it just got published last week. So check that out if you want to support the site. Took a couple of years to write because I can't write all the time with the football season going on in the draft. So I'm happy with how it turned out. So all right, the Monday night game, Patriots at the Jets. This line opened up Patriots -10, still -10. I saw 9.5, but it's still 10 for the most part. So who do you like in this game?
I like the Jets. I think the Patriots offense needs a bit of a wake-up call. Their defense has been great this year, but they may be down multiple receivers. They still don't have a tight end, and their running game hasn't been very good this year. Part of that is because their offensive line has been very banged up, and Marshall Newhouse is starting at left tackle right now, and he's kind of regressed after starting off solid for them. I just think the Jets got a little spark from Darnold. They should be able to move the ball better a bit. I don't think they're doing anything big against the Pats defense, but they're going to do more than the 105 yards they put up. Like that was the legit number of yards they put up last time they faced them with Luke Falk QB. And I think because the Jets are at home, I think this is going to be closer than people think. I think it might be within a touchdown. The Patriots still are going to win, but I just see too many opportunities for the Jets to keep this close if they can play good defense. Kind of similar to the New England Buffalo game when they were in Buffalo. They ended up winning, but they didn't cover the spread, I don't think, because they won 16-10. So I see a game similar to that happening, defensive battle. So I'll go with the Jets here.
I agree. Are you betting this game?
Let's see what I wrote down. I am betting this game for 2 units. Yes.
Okay, you're braver than I am. I considered. I was like, okay, I like the Jets, but am I going to bet them? And I thought about it, and yeah, this line's a little bit too high. I made the spread New England -6. DVOA says -7 is the right number, so this kind of like we're going through key numbers here, so that's important. You're dead on. I mean, these divisional games sometimes tend to be close if the team can be competitive. Obviously, last time the Jets weren't, and the Jets just got a miracle cover with that pick six. But considering that the Patriots already blew out the Jets, I don't know how much motivation they're going to have to play this game, especially considering that they have tougher opponents coming up. So I don't know like how focused they're going to be, in this rematch. And the Jets are much better with Sam Darnold. And we have a question on the screen: is Mosley going to be back? I don't know. I hope so, because the Jets are going to be much better with Mosley. And if Mosley returns, I would be maybe inclined to bet the Jets. The two issues I have here, and that kind of I was like thinking about betting the Jets, and this kind of like took me off the Jets. First is, the Patriots just had a habit of covering, like getting front door covers. Like they do it all the time. They did it on Thursday night against the Giants. And then someone wrote on Facebook, they're like, you were so lucky that the Patriots covered. I'm like, I've been on the opposite side of this so many times over the years. I had a big play against it was the Chargers at Patriots a few years ago. I had the Chargers +6.5, and the Patriots, they were up 5 with a minute left. They kicked the field goal to go up 8. It's stuff like that. This happened all the time. So that's one concern I have. Another is that Bill Belichick has had extra time to prepare for this game. And Belichick has just been great with extra time to prepare. He's just amazing. I don't have the exact stat, but he covers 60 to 70% of the time. So that worries me as well. I'm going to be on the Jets, but I don't know if I'm going to bet this game. If Mosley returns, I might do it. But right now I'm not.
Yeah, I'm a little bit insane because I spend so much time reading and writing all sorts of Patriots content and stuff. So I've just seen throughout the weeks, their offense just hasn't been good. And I feel like they're at some point gonna fall flat on their face. And I feel like this is a good week for it. And they need a wake up call. That's how I see it. I just think it's gonna come at some point. And frankly, for them, the sooner the better on the offensive side of the ball, because they need to make some trades and get someone to help at receiver and someone to help at tight end. So we'll see what happens. I could be proven horribly wrong, which I probably will be, because I'm due for a massive regression like we talked about this week. But I'll be on the Jets, and I'll be bold this week. Yep, there we go. Patriots will massacre the Jets. Yep. I like to see that. I do like to see that.
Yeah. I feel like most people think that, the 2/3 of the money is on the Jets or in the Patriots. So it's kind of like a common thought process there. But the Patriots offensive line, like you said, just hasn't been playing well at all. The Giants sacked Brady, was it 3 times? And the Giants have no pass rush to speak of. Whereas the Jets have, the 2 Williams guys and also Jordan Jenkins. They have some guys who can get to the quarterback. So I can see Brady having a bad game, for just kind of the fantasy player he is. But then catching fire in the third quarter, and then threatening to cover the spread, even though I see the Patriots being down by 10 and then having a chance to cover at the end. And it's kind of how their games have gone.
Yeah, no, that definitely could happen. They're always a threat just to break one massive play that you're like, well, there we go. The cover's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to everyone in the chat, including Gordon, Liddy there. Same time every Tuesday. It's around 6:30, 6:45. This is our usual start time. So definitely check back. So do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, still covered Redskins stuff over at Rigo's Rag. Probably touch on some potential Trent Williams trades some point in the near future. Over at NBC Sports Boston, we've got a bunch of trade deadline content coming out over there from Tom Curran and Phil Perry and myself. I'll be looking into some stuff, and basketball season's around the corner too, for those who like that. And also, read Walt's book. I just started it. It's really, really good. I'm 50 pages in. I started it today, so I'm looking forward to finishing this. You all should read it. Please do. Support the site.
Awesome. Thanks for plugging that. Yeah, speaking of the site, walterfootball.com, updates on picks, fantasy rankings, and a 2020 mock draft update. I have to move up CD Lamb after what he did against Texas. So looking forward to seeing where he's going to go. I haven't done my mock draft yet, but I'm looking forward to doing it tonight. And as soon as we get off, I'm going to do Jalen Ramsey trade grades. So definitely check that out. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.
Bye.